Okay, let's talk about the USI folder that we created from the PC prep training video. Go ahead and open your system CD, and you'll find a folder in there called Install 2020. Go ahead and open that folder, and inside of this folder you'll see various folders with the name release before that. And what this indicates is that these are the release versions, current released versions of firmware and software, as well as other software applications such as Yukon, the router management software here, the MC config software, MCP config software, and the JPanel software, and so forth. All of the folders that are here, no matter what they are, that have a release in front of them, indicate that that's the current version at this time of this system CD that you're looking at. Now, if you've received a system that's brand new, then all of this should be current, and it should resemble exactly what's in your system anyway. If you're looking at this as an upgrade to a system that you've had for some time, and you've compared that TOC text file that we talked about in the introduction CD, your versions aren't current, and you'd like to upgrade those, we're going to talk about how you do that in this video. Now, inside any given release folder here that is actual hardware, such as the MC40s or the master control panels, the MX Later, if you have any of these devices, and SC4 is most common, almost every system that's out there would have one of these. When you open any one of these folders, you're going to notice that there will be an updates and an encode folder for sure. You may see the same ones such as backups, bin, and logs in the other folders, but you'll also see a version for that particular device, text file. And when you double click that or open it in Notepad or WordPad, whatever works, each one of these folders that have one of these will show the current versions. They'll show all the bug fixes and any features that were added for that particular version. So if you scroll down and find your version in here, maybe you're running something down in the 2 or 3 versions out, you can see all of the changes that have been made to every version up until the current release. If it's something that you think that you need, then you can proceed to do the upgrade. If it's not, then there's really no necessary reason for you to go forward and upgrade your system. Regardless, though, you're going to see this updates and encode folder. We'll go back up and I'll show you another one. So for example, if I go into the MCP, you'll see the encodes and the updates, and you might see some other information such as these 2 files that exist in, each one will have their own possible applications in there. But you need to make, you just to look here, encode and updates is very important, and you'll see why. And again, each one of them have their own version. And see, this opened in Notepad, so we need to open this with WordPad so that it lays it down in here. And the MCP versions, this is the most recent, and there's nothing prior to this that we have information on for the MCP. But in any case, every one of these will have some information of the most recent features and bug lists that have been fixed. Now, with that said, for these to work properly and for you to perform upgrades and encode retrieval and such, our system has been designed so that there's a folder on the C drive called USI. And that USI folder needs to have specific information in there for it to run the script files properly. So it has to be done exactly by the book here on the way that this is installed. So if you scroll down inside of the Install 2020 folder, you'll find this Install 2020 executable. Now, the reason, if you're wondering why we call it Install 2020, that was the original creation of this design that we used called the script file USI design and functionality. It began with the 2020 master control, and most of the devices that you see in here are related to master control, but it's expanded into all of our control systems and machine control and everything that you see in here. But we've just left it Install 2020 as a global name for that application. Okay, so I'm going to leave this open like this. I'm going to come down here and open the C drive, and let's navigate back to back to our C drive, and you'll notice that the USI folder here only has the downloads folder within it. And that happened back when we did the PC prep from the introduction training video. So now I'm going to leave that open. We're going to come back down here to the install 2020 folder. We're going to run this application. Now when you first double click on it, you're going to notice this splash window that comes up shows that you can either do an install or an upgrade. Now this is talking about this USI folder area. It's not talking about any devices particularly at all. It's talking about the USI folders. Since we have no entries of release folders over here at this time, then we need to perform the install. Okay, so if I perform an install to, let's say my system is going to be called KUSI. So under the call letters, you're going to put whatever name you want to call this. Okay, the shorter names may be better in your case. It just really doesn't matter. I'm going to call mine KUSI. And then what you're going to do is drop down this arrow that will show you all of the folders. So if I slide this over, and let's see if I can get behind here and show you this. Okay, we move this over and scroll up. Okay, and you look back over here at this. When we drop down this system type, you'll notice that everything you see in here are going to be related to every one of these folders on the left. This ESI, HD, MC40, MC400, MCP. These are the physical hardware devices that we can perform upgrades to in the future or send programming to. They are the devices. They are the physical devices that all have CPUs with flash and so forth on board. Everything that you do not see in here are basically just software applications that you can install from the install 2020 folder itself. Like, for example, just Yukon. You would go in there and there's a way to install it straight from there, and I'll show you that in a while here. Okay, so let's say that we want to install an SC4 for the first time on my system. So I'm going to say OK, and then you'll get a dialog box that pops up here, and it will take, what it's doing is it's retrieving. I'm going to go ahead and press any key to continue, and what that's doing is it's retrieving everything that it finds in this release SC4 folder, mimicking it, and placing it on the USI drive. So you'll notice on my USI drive now, I have a KUSI-SC401. Okay, now if we open this folder, you're going to notice these are the exact same folders that we had seen in the previous folder on the install 2020 called release SC4. But what it has done is it's taken all of those folders here that have within these folders, there are script files such as a get encoding and a burn the encoding batch file and set panel IDs. These batch files came from the same location that the system installation was on. So inside of here, if we open our SC4, you'll see that inside of here, it has the same files. You'll notice that it actually copied those onto this structure over here. However, what it's done is it's gone into these batch files, these script files. If we go up one, and it has placed a system name in here that it gets from this USI, or my name, my system name in SC401, and it's placed that in all of the script files. So as these script files are ran from any one of these, so here's a Tieline clear batch file, or a release batch file, or a get system information or revisions, all of these batch files are now written because of that system name that it found. It's written in that folder. So you can't just place these files anywhere you'd like on your system. They have to reside in the C drive on in this folder that we've created from the install 2020. So every time that you run this, it knows that this is where it needs to exist. Okay, and so now the reason that it has a 01 behind the SC4 is that if I wanted to run if I had two of one particular device, you wouldn't have that of an SC4. but you might have that of, let's say you have a master control. So we'll also put in KUSI, and let's say we have 2 channels of SD master control. Okay, channel 1, and we just place an SD in here. Again, it's an install. We click OK. It's going to take all of the release files that it finds from the release SD folder and create a folder over here called SD01 and place all of those files inside that folder. Okay, we'll say OK on this. It leaves it here in case we want to do another install. If we look over here, again, we've got all of our folders. It's got this new system name, which it gathers up from what we've just created, and it places that in all of the batch files. Okay, so we come back up one. Now here's how I'm going to show you the use of this 01. If you had a second channel of master control, you'd run another install. You could call it KUSI again, or you can call these by channels. If you call them a different name, it'll come up with another 01 behind it. And we'll pick the SD again. You'll have to play with this and kind of see what I'm talking about. But if you had an HD and an SD, then you would do the same thing, dropping down the HD, and then you would end up getting a folder called HD01. Okay, press any key to continue. Setup's complete. You'll notice there's now an SD01 and an SD02. So it basically, every time you run this with the same name, it just creates another instance of it. Same exact files, but it calls them channel 1 and channel 2. Then you can kind of keep it isolated. However, if you really had maybe you have 2 stations in one, it's a duopoly or something, you could literally put the name of each one of those when you do the install, and it'll just create an SD01 and another SD01 with the real name in front of it. Okay, but regardless, you cannot change this name. It has to remain as you see it. It needs to have the 01s and sometimes the 02s in there. So just ignore this ending part. The name over here gets created by how you create it when you put the call letters in. Okay, now, if you're performing an upgrade, what that means is if you have a system, for example, let's say you had a system here that, let's go into the updates folder. The updates folder on every one of these shows all of the firmware and software versions that exist inside of here. And let's say you received this CD a year ago, and it didn't have this software version 191. So I'm going to delete this out of here. And let's say it didn't have, and we'd have to remove this release batch file also. So let's say that your current system a year ago was running software version 182. And let's say it was running firmware version 218. So we'll get rid of the 221. So let's say it only had this. And now you've received another system CD from us, and you want to get the current firmware and software information placed inside this folder. So let's just leave this running as it is, SC4. Again, if you went in here and looked at updates, this is the current information that you had a year ago, let's say. Okay, so we'll go back up to here and just leave it here. You can leave it wherever. I'm just going to show you how this works. You go to Install 2020. Okay, now this time when we run this, we're going to check the upgrade. And then when we click OK, now it's going to ask us to drop down the window and go and choose one of the folders that it finds in the CUSI folder. Okay, we're going to choose our SC4. Now what's going to happen, because this is a current released version, when I click OK here, it's going to go and grab the new files that it finds in the SC4 folder, and anything that is newer than what's already in your existing system, it will then place that inside of your SC4 folder, this particular SC4 folder. So we'll click OK. And then you'll notice, we'll go ahead and click OK here and then cancel. And you'll notice over here on our new system, it's placed those folders down here at the bottom. And if we just press F5 on your keyboard, it'll refresh those, and there they are. So it's basically upgrading what you currently have on your system CD or the CUSI location with the current release versions and putting them in here so that you can now run those particular upgrades to your devices. So basically the Install 2020 then is literally designed to create these folders and then to place the releases in there of the current upgrade if you already have a system ready to go. And we'll show you here on another demonstration on how to run different batch files and how to run the upgrades and for the software and the firmware, and how to do configuration editing and then retrieving the configurations and sending them back to the 2020 using the USI structure, USI batch file system. And again, all of this that we've talked about here on this Install 2020 training can be found in the System Installation Guide under section number 2 of the manual CD.